Hello, I am Mark Tucker.
And I am Alan Furstenberg, and welcome to Two Voice Devs.
Two Voice Devs. Hey, welcome, Alan.
Good to see you again, Mark. Always great to sit down and just be able to chat and kind of explore some ideas with you.
Yeah, we had a good time with that. We've talked about, just recently things about post APL. We've talked about exploring APL together.
We've talked about some speech markdown stuff.
Some changes for that, yeah.
And it actually turns out I kind of have a question for you.
Okay.
And maybe I'll put it this way. So I work on a project called Multivocal.
Yes.
And this is a library that I've developed that's meant to be used as part of the webhook fulfillment. So when we say things, one of the ways that it gets handled through a skill or an action is either Alexa or the assistant takes that and sends some JSON to code that we control. And we'll call this various things. Webhook is one of the terms that we tend to use. Fairly early on, I was not happy with how Google's standard library for this worked. And I wasn't happy at all with how Amazon's library for this works. So I started working on my own that I called Multivocal, which takes a very different approach to it, which we can kind of talk about another time. I don't want to get too far into that, but for folks who are starting out, there are other ways to handle fulfillment. I know you like using Jovo, and Jovo does some amazing stuff, both on the fulfillment side and just for the design and building side. Mm-hmm. One of the things that Jovo has that Multivocal doesn't is it actually supports Alexa. I've never gotten around to supporting Alexa till now.
Until now?
All right. Yeah, until now.
All right.
So both you and Dana Gibson have been nudging me more and more to work on Alexa support for it. And I finally started taking a peek at what it would take. And I've done some of it before. Because Multivocal evolved from a previous library that did have support for both platforms, but it's evolved a lot since then. And one of the things that is challenging is that at the time I wrote it, Dialogflow kind of had two pieces of information that it would send when an intent got triggered. And again, I like to think about an intent just represents what the user says or does, usually with some parameters to give details about what they said or did. It's not how you handle that. That's what we're writing. It's what they said or did. Dialogflow enhances that, though, with a field that it used to call action, which in hindsight is a poorly named term. The action represents a slightly higher level notion of an intent. So multiple intents, multiple ways that we say something may represent the same action that we're trying to do. So for example, if I was at the end of a page that I was reading, and I could say, go to the next page. Or it could tell me, you're at the end of a page, do you want to go to the next one? And I would say yes. It's a kind of weak example, but those in some ways are two kind of different intents. One is just representing the fact that I'm saying something affirmative, whereas the other one is concretely saying, go to the next page.
Right.
Both of those, however, really kind of want to elicit the same action, going to the next page. So Dialogflow has this as a concept that could be attached to intents. So while each intent has to have a unique name, the action can be shared amongst multiple intents.
So I'm kind of thinking through this. So I know that like Jovo has the concept of states, and that's good in I'm dealing with this part, the sub part of my system, and these are the intents that I care about. So I've got, if I say this, I want to handle this, I want to handle this, I want to handle this. And usually those are all kind of wrapped around this question that gets asked. So some question gets asked and you can respond to it in various different ways. And I very much have situations where you ask a question, would you like to go to the next item? Might be the question that I ask, and the person might say yes, or they might say next. Both of those are the same thing, but no isn't. No is kind of more of the same as cancel. So if you say no or cancel, then it leaves that state. And if you say something that's not in this list of things that you handle, then maybe the main action is to reprompt with the same question or a variation of the question that was asked, because you haven't finished that step of the conversation. So you can't really go on. So I understand that. And so state is kind of that idea. And then like you throw into a visual interface as well, you might have a next button, which does the same thing as if you were to say next. And those are different in APL. You can have a button and map it or not map it to something that you say.
So we can states related, but not entirely related to it. And actually we'll get to my next part of the question. So
you're talking about, in this case, I think like yes and next would be the same action, and no and cancel would be the same action. And you could elicit responses based on the action as opposed to what the intent was.
Right. So multivocal was designed around this concept of an action being there. You could use intents, but it made more sense in a lot of cases to just use the action that was also being provided. Action Builder, when they released it, ditched the notion of an action for in an attempt to make things more clear when it was named, and instead called this a handler name. So you could hook up multiple intents to use the same handler name, and then in your webhook, you would do something based on what the handler name was set to. Multivocal maps that to an action. So it's on multivocal side, it treats them the same. Dialogflow CX, the new version of Dialogflow, also has a handler name, same concept. The Alexa Skills Kit doesn't. As far as I can tell, all it's sending me is an intent name, and it's not even doing that in some cases.
Yeah, so the two frameworks that I'm most familiar with is Alexa Skills Kit version 2, which has this new paradigm where you have a can handle pair. So you've got something that queries like, can this block of code handle the situation that I'm at currently? And you can, what that typically maps to though is like, is the request that comes in, is the intent of a certain intent, and it could be, and this other variable set, and it could be, and has a slot value that's this. So the can handle kind of determines on if the handle even gets called or not, or if it shuffles on to the next one and checks, and you get less and less specific as it goes down the chain until some general purpose handler happens, or the fallback. Yeah, go ahead.
Now, two things there. We'll deal with fallback intents another time.
Yeah.
One is that sounds like it's great for handling state type stuff.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah.
Okay.
And the thing is that the frameworks themselves, neither Jovo nor Alexa Skills Kit version 2 has support for this mapping. You would have to do something where you'd have to say if the intent is this, and more likely you'd have to say is if the state is this and the intent is this or this, then the action is this. And then set the action someplace on, you can usually like just tack it onto the request so that later something else can pick it up. So maybe all your can handles or things could, or maybe there's even just more of a general purpose one where it does this mapping and then it calls multivocal to say, this is the action that I care about. Give me back the response that I'm going to return.
So that was the second question that I had, is where is this mapping itself? Is it in the webhook library that ASK offers, or is it in something you set up in the skill?
Yeah. So what you're going to have to do is set up something in the skill.
Oh, interesting.
The way
Okay.
that Alexa Skills Kit does it, they have this this concept of interceptors. There's a request interceptor that happens after the request comes in, but before anything handles it, before it goes through that whole pipeline checking all the can handles. So you could do a request interceptor that is a intent state to action mapper or something like that. And then
And then how is that sent to the webhook? There's a field in the JSON that this is sent in?
well, no, so this is actually code inside of the skills webhook that
Okay,
you
so
that you
okay.
define this interceptor. Sorry.
Okay, okay. So this is something that multivocal needs to duplicate, which is kind of where I was going with this.
Yeah, so multivocal would need to add if kind of the main or one of the main features of multivocal is being able to select the response based on an action, then you're going to need to either put the onus on the developer to, as they code these different things, then their main job inside the handler would be to determine what that action is and then call multivocal and get the response. Or you could, if you could do it in like a general mapping sort of way, you might be able to do one of these request interceptors that would do the different mapping. And the developer would probably still have to set up, like, if you're in this state and this thing happens, then the action is this.
Right.
And then in the handler, you could even just, it could, maybe if it's even just one main handler that says, if the action is sent, then get the response from multivocal. Otherwise, you could do all these other ones, right?
Well, so here's the thing. This is definitely something that I can put in multivocal. So I don't think I need the request interceptor. So I wouldn't need the ASK library. I just be taking the JSON that comes in itself.
Yeah. So the JSON that you're, so what you're saying is that the input into multivocal is a JSON.
Mm-hmm.
One of those things being an action.
Well, no. The input that would come in, so the way, at least I think, as I understand it, the way the Alexa webhook works is that Alexa sends a chunk of JSON.
Yep. Okay.
With a bunch of fields that includes things like, the user account information, the account that's speaking at the time. Very
similar,
right.
Same purpose as
session ID.
What actions on Google sends you. That same purpose of the JSON. Yes.
Right. Similar fields in different locations, and multivocal does have a way to handle pulling data out from different locations. One of those fields, and this may be this is more a question, is one of those fields the intent name?
Yes, one of those fields in the request JSON is the intent name.
Okay, so what multivocal would need to do is it extracts the intent name, just like it does for for Dialogflow and Action Builder.
Yep.
The difference is that in trying to figure out what the action would be, instead of looking to that JSON, it would need to take the intent and look up, go to a table somewhere and say, this intent under these circumstances maps to this action.
Yeah, but you don't want that code in multivocal, right? You'd have to call back out into the.
Nope, I want it in multivocal.
Oh, okay.
I want it in multivocal because one of multivocal's kind of core principles is, as much as possible, is configuration based. So you would put in your configuration somewhere, here are the intents and here are the actions that it maps to.
Okay, I see that.
If you're using Alexa, and if you're using some other device that does not have the same notion, you need the same sort of mapping, but it might be different intent names because Alexa has its own custom intent names in some cases. So
and it's a little bit more complicated because there's not just an intent. If it's a launch, there's a launch intent, which looks differently.
Okay.
Which looks differently than an intent request, because the intent request then has what the intent name is, and then there's the session end which looks different. So there's kind of like, for one, it all falls under the request JSON. There is a request section inside that request JSON, which includes things like the request ID and I think the locale. But it's going to have a field that you can see, is it a launch, an end, or an intent? Kind of like this, the launch and end are kind of like the sandwich, the bread on the sandwich, and then all the intents have their own. And there's other special ones, like if you've called off into in-skill purchasing, then you'll get an event coming back in. If you're an APL and you hit a button, you get a user event. So there's going to be more than just those standard 3.
Okay.
But yeah, it's doable though to say in different configuration situations, when this happens, then it's going to map to this action.
How do you detect which? So these are all just different kinds of objects that are in the request.
Yeah, and so what happens with both? Well, definitely with Jovo, I think with Alexa Skills Kit V2, is that it kind of abstracts those out. So then because there's a way in Jovo where you can just say, what was the route that I was getting sent to? And it would say, oh, you were going to go to launch or end or the name of the intent. And so you could still get it as a string, but you'd probably just have to add some logic to say, if this property exists, then you know that it's a launch. So then treat it, here's the string to use for launch. Same thing with end, same thing for each of these other ones. And, the half dozen or whatever there might be of the different request types, then you would just have to, figure out how you're going to represent that in your system, and then use that string as the mapping or to help to map to the action.
Okay, so that makes sense. So if I detect a launch intent, I would create a intent with a fake name of launch or welcome or whatever.
Yeah, you could abstract it however you wanted.
Yep.
That would make sense in your system. Yeah,
that all will fit into Multivocal's pattern, I think.
Oh, good.
So promises to be interesting. I kind of like where I think this will end up.
So what you might want to consider is, the different types of intents, which could be, like I say, a user event that's like coming from a button press from the APL as well. You'd want to be able to have those represented, but you'd also want to be able to say, as part of this condition, that would make up what determines an action, would be the concept of a state. Now,
so here's the fun thing about Multivocal.
All right.
Is 90% or so of what Multivocal is a template engine.
Yep.
So even some of these conditionals can be written as template, using the template language that already exists.
Oh, nice.
And it just returns a string. So as part of that, you would say, test for these conditions. If these conditions are met, this is the string that represents the action name. And if it's these other conditions instead, it's this string that represents the action name.
Oh, I like that. That's interesting, because I've had to do like weird things where I'm like, I'm capturing the next intent and I'm capturing the yes intent, and I'm redirecting both to the, one to the other.
Yeah.
And then I get to use the button press for next as well, and I have to map that to redirect to one of the. So it's interesting because I do like the idea of being able to say this is the action, and then maybe even like when do you have the ability to say, if this is the action, then do some things and then change what the action is? So you could use the action kind of to help determine what code runs, which might call an API, which would determine what the action changes to, because that's the final.
So there's two things. One, sort of, but only sort of.
Okay.
One of the, so you can register. So you do normally register an action handler. So then this is the only thing that isn't configuration really. This is actually code that you run that does stuff to it. But one of the other things that you can define is what I refer to as an outtent. You have an intent, you have an outtent.
All right.
And this is just a string that you set. So you can set an outtent to be whatever you want it to be. And then Multivocal has essentially a long list of things that it checks to see if it can find a response for. So it goes and looks and says, okay, you set the out tent to this value. Are there any responses set for that out tent? Nope, don't see any. Okay, let me go see. Here's what the action is. Are there any responses set for this action?
Oh,
Nope.
okay.
So it kind of has a chain of things that it looks at. I mean, it also evaluates a bunch of other criteria as well,
Right.
which we should get into another time, but I'm not going to tonight.
So it's a template view engine.
Yeah, basically.
All right.
So, as much as possible, I wanted to put things in configuration because this meant that I didn't need to go change strings in code.
Yeah.
I didn't hunt that down. It just meant, if I want to trigger an error, I'd set the outtent to error whatever.
Yep.
And it would pick an appropriate message from the list of things that are assigned to error whatever.
Nice. All right.
And again, these responses are templated responses, which can have conditionals in them. So I could, if it's one item that's being returned versus 3 items being returned, it can pull up a different set of responses.
Yeah.
That is more grammatically correct.
Yeah. Nice. Okay.
So, and now mixing into all of this will be information about, what platform you're on, including, is this Alexa?
So you could have a situation where if the out tent is a certain thing and it would work across platforms, then it would just use that one, but you could have a platform specific version of an out tent.
Yes.
That would then, serve that up if it was.
Right. And this is where things start getting chaotic. So
chaotic good or chaotic evil?
I hope chaotic good. But it's a die roll. It really is. And we'll get into all of this another time, I think.
I'm excited about where this is going from what I understand now.
So hopefully within the next few weeks, I will have at least a prototype version for Alexa with multivocal. And I'm pretty excited for that.
Yeah, no, congratulations. That's cool. I know you've been thinking about it. You've been working on this project for years, and we've talked about Alexa support. So this is exciting. And we had talked at one point. I was like looking at some stuff from a year ago. We were talking about, hey, maybe you could get speech markdown into multivocal, and now it's already there. So.
And now it's there. I mean, that was a major release a couple of versions back, and it's not just that it's there. It's really a core component of what multivocal does. It really takes advantage, and one of the updates for this release as well is going to be improved voice support. Multivocal already has some support of the voice tag, and now it's going to be leveraging speech markdown's improved voice tag support as well.
Excellent. Well, very nice. Congratulations again on this project, and if it takes you 1 week or 3 weeks or whatever, I'm sure you'll solve whatever problems you run into. But it'll be.
And I'm sure I will be talking to you and others as I do run into those problems to make sure.
Please do.
To try to iron things out.
That sounds good.
So
well,
thanks very much for all your help with this. It really.
Oh yeah, you're welcome.
Really, I think confirms that I think I'm on the right track to implement it.
Yeah, and I like that extra layer.
Yeah,
I like that extra layer of indirection that you get with the action too.
Really, as I build things more and more, it was surprising just how much you start thinking that way, and it really does help.
All right, well, cool. I'm excited for you.
Thank you very much, and thanks for your help on this.
You're welcome. Well, we'll catch you on another episode of Two Voice Devs.
Two Voice Devs.
And take care, everybody, and just be nice to everybody.
Thanksgiving's coming up. Be good to everyone, folks.
Lots of things to be grateful for.
Take care.
All right, bye-bye.